My name is Ruth and Payne Franklin. Our church, the only school we had to go to was in the church building, and there were different rooms set up for classes, and they would really have a curtain to separate them. The church was the central location for the community. The community was totally relatives, really. Almost all of us were somehow or some way kin. First cousins, uncles, aunts, all of that made up the community of Birch Creek.
Do you still keep in touch with any of them?
I was just there last August. I went to my mother's first cousin's 100th birthday.
Wow.
And she's the only one living now in that community, around that community. Her name is Opal. Her last name is Young, Opal Young. She was my mother's dad's sister's brother, her son. A. Rosalie's son was her husband. And I talk to her as much as I can because it's so special to have someone who knew me as QB, Texas name.
That was your Texas name.
If you went to Texas today and you wanted to find out, or if you called my name, everybody knew me as QB as I was growing up.
Why did they call you QB?
My grandmother gave me that name. My grandmother said that it was an African name, and she named 3 of us. My brother, she called him Bo, and my sister, she called her Molly. All 3 of us. This was my grandmother. She was from Africa. It was a Baptist church, and I went to church when I was there in August. They've torn the church down. The only thing left is the big bell that was up on the church, and that bell would ring when somebody died. It would ring, I guess it had a certain ring to it, and that's how the message would get out. And then, because there was no other way to communicate, it went from mouth to mouth. But there was a lot of funerals. The graveyard is right behind the old church, was right behind the old church. The church was called Pleasant Hill Baptist Church, and the cemetery is also called Pleasant Hill Baptist Church. I was there, when I was there in August, I really couldn't do anything but go to the gravesite. That's where all of my relatives were. They were right there in the gravesite, and I got a chance to see them there. Their graves. And a lot of them were younger than I that had passed on. It was sad to see how many had gone. Well, when I was younger in church, Mom would bring all of us to church, her babies, and the aunts, my mother's mother's sisters would take one of us and hold us during the service. An aunt would take me every Sunday. She wouldn't miss. She'd get me and set me in her lap, and she'd be doing this, and I thought she was happy or something. But my aunt had shaky posture, and she couldn't help it. But I sat there in her lap every Sunday, and her name was, can't think of her name now, but
Were you
anyway.
baptized there?
I was baptized. We all were baptized that spring before I came out here. The reason for spring baptism was because we had the reunion, we had they had church every night. I can't think, you call it, what do you call that? Anyway.
Like revival?
We'd have it every night for a week, and they would put certain age people on a mona's bench. And those that sat on, that would be us, people my age. They would have us sitting on the mona bench. And then every once in a while, somebody would give up and give the pastor his hand, and that was called joining the church. Okay, when the conference was over, we all got dressed in our white sheets, and we got in the wagon, and we went to the pool to be baptized, all of us, on one day, because it was only done, baptism was only done in the summertime when you could get in the pool. Growing up in Chandler was, we only could live, to begin with, thank the good Lord. To begin with, we lived out in Chandler Heights, way out there. And I was in high school now, and Dad couldn't get his old car to crank up and to make it to catch the bus at 7:30 every morning. I caught the Sun Valley bus, 7:30 every morning to come to Phoenix. Well, one day he said, go down there and ask if there's any place for us to rent. And sure enough, I walked down there. It was 2 streets, Saragossa and Elgin, I believe, something like that, Delaware and Elgin. Anyway, I asked, there was 2 ladies standing at the fence talking, and I asked them, I said, is there a place that we could rent? And she told me to go down there. There's a lady down there, she's renting. The house was 3 doors from where they lived. And I got there, and the lady said, yes, and she would rent it for $10. I ran down to the post office and got my $10 out of my account because my working had saved some money. Came back and gave it to her, and we moved into Chandler that year.
So it was your dad, your mother, and how many siblings did you have?
And then I had 6.
6.
After my brother and my sister graduated from that elementary school, they set up 7 miles outside of Chandler in adobe housing. They had 2 classes there and 2 teachers. One taught 4th grade to 8th grade, and the other one taught kindergarten up. And they all had to come from Phoenix because They tried to find a place to live in Chandler, and they refused to give them a place to live. So they drove 24 miles, from Phoenix every day just to teach us. Most of the time we were on the ground before they got there, and the janitor was our supervisor. And when we played, it was kookaburras and we just had, it was just a place to cover our heads, really. Had a blackboard in it, but it was not a convenient house for schooling. That's why I said when I came here, this was a well-kept, beautiful building. And I walked in the back door down there. I came in that back door because I had walked all the way from 5th and Van Buren down here to the school every day, rain or shine. That was where the bus dropped us off. That was his behavior. He was good enough to drop us off there. It was 10 of us graduated that year from that elementary school. We all wanted, the old principal, he came to our graduation and he sat there, and as he spoke, he said, "We don't have a place for you to go to school, but we have made arrangements for you to go to the colored high school in Phoenix." And that's where we all, those that graduated that year, we all came on that Sun Valley bus, because then Williamville had a bus that ran to Phoenix every hour. And we caught that bus. They paid us, if we went to school, we got, I think it was $1 or something to pay the bus driver. We did pay for it from what the Board of Education gave us if we went to school. If we didn't go to school, we didn't get paid that day. And most of us, and I and my brother and sister were the only ones that stayed on that bus and went all the way through high school. The others moved into Phoenix, or they dropped out for whatever reason.
And that was the reason why you didn't attend school in Chandler, because they didn't offer that?
They didn't let us go to Chandler. And when I would go, because I had to collect each one of our being at school, I would collect it and I'd take it to him. And I would get to that door, and there's a sour spot for Chandler High School in my heart today. I would get to that door, and this superintendent would be sitting up there with the desk across the door and his feet on the desk. And that's where he paid me the money for each child that went to school. Didn't even let me go inside of that building. I had to get it at the door. 1944, September of 1944, I walked through those doors as a freshman, 9th grade.
And you liked your experience here?
I really loved it. It was so beautiful. It was a very good school. I did radio programs for the English class, but here are all of the teachers that I've been trying to remember their name that came here, and these were the very good cooks that made all of the good meal.
Chicken
We had all of the classes that any school had. We had reading, English, math, chemistry, biology. We had all of the classes. We had the best of teachers because that year, Mr. Robinson had been chosen the first principal, really, because Mr. Lee was just under the Board of Education. He was just like the person that kept everything organized as a principal. But and then they hired Mr. Robinson from back east. Mr. Robinson came and he started to clear up some of the things that were going on that he was not pleased with. First of all, he brought all master teachers from back east. I was an art student. I have a picture of myself, Mr. Grigsby's first art class, and we didn't have a class. We met outside of this building, right out there in the yard. That's where I did my artwork. I loved art. As a matter of fact, I won. My picture that I painted that year won second prize for the state of Arizona.
Wow, what was it a picture of?
Huh?
What was it a picture of?
The buildings over there. I don't know if that picture is anywhere. I would have loved to found it, but I still have it in the back of my mind how important it was.
Do you still paint or draw?
Beg pardon?
Do you still paint or draw or do anything artistic?
Oh, I taught it. Reserve Officers Training Corps. That was our physical education class. And we marched in every celebration in Phoenix. We were out there on that street marching. There should be some pictures somewhere. I would like to find them if they are, of us marching up and down the city of Phoenix on all celebrations. We had some used uniforms that came from Phoenix. All of the stuff that we had here at Carver was used. Instruments, typewriters, uniforms. And as a matter of fact, there were no uniforms for the young men that played basketball. And the director said and I showed you his picture, said he would go down and he bought 5 uniforms, that's all they had, and he'd have one of them, somebody had to get out of one and put the others on when they had to play. But they did not have the uniforms to play, although they could not play anybody but the Indians anyway at that beginning. So graduating, my brother and my sister and I and others did graduate that moved away from there in the class of 1948. June 6th was our graduation. And it was 60 of us, equal number of boys and girls. And first we did our baccalaureate service in the gym here. You know, you always did a baccalaureate service. That was a fun day to go get dressed up and get that done. And the graduation was in Phoenix Union High School, which I was the speaker for that. And my speech was, lest we forget. And I really worked on that speech so that I could stand before all of the parents that had come to that graduation. I didn't go home that day. I just brought my clothes up here so I would go to the graduation. And I stayed with my friend, Maria, and her mother and father put us in a cab and sent us to the graduation. We were so proud of that.
That's an amazing honor. What was that?
It was an honor.
Yeah.
We were real proud of that. Maria Brooks was her name, and she was my best friend. And I often would stay, sometimes I would stay at her house, and she stayed at my house too.
Is she from Phoenix?
She lived down on 24th and what is that, 24th and Roosevelt? No, anyway, she lived right there. Her house is still there. Marie passed on, my best friend. We were ROTC officers. I was the major, and she was the captain. Yes, I had a lot of friends because Beatrice, mostly my classmates, and Flora was one of my friends. She passed on just not too long ago. Flora, but I can't think of their names right now, but we would sit out there and have our lunch out there under that tree together. And we did classes together. This is my friend Marie right here in a Spanish class. That's a picture of her. But we were all friends here, like sisters and brothers.
You guys were a tight community.
It was a family. We cared about each other, and there was no fighting among us, as I know of. Yeah, one joke was that my brother-in-law, James Akins, was working. He was a photographer, and he'd go in the room, one of these rooms, and he would develop pictures. And one day he and another friend were in that room, and they mixed up some kind of concoction, and they were out there on the field marching, and that stuff got hot. And it popped like it was a machine gun. And they really had a kick out of that activity coming from James Akins being such a scientist and engineering and making stuff. And it was a laugh. I can't think of anything other than that, other than one of my classmates, she was always chewing gum. And so she gets in the graduating class, Miss Rogers pushed her in because she was late. And she said, "Spit that gum out." She was still chewing gum. Loved to chew gum. And I suppose the teachers always had to tell her not to do that, especially in class. And in the graduation class, Miss Rogers said, no, you don't do that. We just went to downtown to the show, and you had to set up in the balcony.
What shows did you
These were cowboy. There was nothing but cowboy movies.
Hmm.
You saw one of them, you saw them all.
Did you like those movies?
No,
No?
just it was a pastime.
Yeah.
We would, there were some of the major dance, blues players, Joy Lloyd, some of those big guys came and did music for the other people. They would do it for us on Thursday night. We did plays here at the school, and we've done them for the museum. Since we started the museum, we did some plays.
Really?
I've read a lot. As a matter of fact, I do book reading with the Tempe African American book reading program. I do book reading with them once a month. And that's one of my ways of getting to read books. And then we discuss it on the internet. It was fun. We like each other. We loved each other. We became family, as I said. And when I went to ASU, we were seated. This is a joke about it. It wasn't really a joke. It was the truth. We were seated alphabetical order in a class that I was taking. And this girl, at that time I was not married. It was a Payne. She was also a Payne. And I sat like this because I didn't want to touch her. And when I go in the bathroom, it would be a scary thing because I had never experienced being among white students or just being around them in that manner, in the bathroom, sitting in the classroom. Walking up and down the halls was very, it was a real new experience for me. I had to change who I was to live that life. We couldn't even eat in the cafeteria at ASU. We as blacks had to go across the street to a little old cafe around ASU. It was only about 3 buildings there then. It was now changing from Teachers College to ASU or whatever it changed into at that time. But they didn't allow us in the cafeteria. So I would go across the street and I would eat potato salad and crackers for my lunch. It was different. It was different because all of these years I had been just under segregated schools, African American schools. My elementary school was that way, and then coming to a college where it was altogether different. Well, because there were some people that were really interested in our lifestyle and what was going on with us. And there were some doctors' wives that were doing the preschool in our community. And I taught at that school with them. They did a book on me and my family to prove to people what our lifestyle was like and what it was like when you have a big family as I had. And they came in the home and they pictured me combing hair with rollers in my hair and my children playing outside. We lived in the housing project in East Los Angeles at that time. and they pictured a daily activity of our lifestyle. And that book is somewhere at somebody's archives. I have some of the pictures of that booklet, but it has gotten kind of dismantled. That was the first book that I was a part of, and I was a part of other books. I was also a part of a movie, and I don't remember what that name was.
As an actor?
Hmm?
As an actor?
I was part of the women that were walking on the street with my bag, with my purse. Whatever that meant. But I got to be involved with that kind of thing.
And this is when you were living in California?
Uh-huh. Yes, I was on that march to Washington when, after the death of Martin Luther King, they came into the city and set up busloads of people, and we all got on a bus wherever we lived. We'd go get on the bus, and we would all end up in Washington, D.C. People would give us lunches on the way. We'd stop somewhere and eat lunches. We would stop at some school or some place and rest. But it was all people that, all of the, people that came out. I came out of my church organization, chose me to take that trip. And that was how people got chosen. I stayed in a house in Washington, D.C. with someone who was already part of the Capitol there. And they were very nice people. I spent the night there with them. The lady gave me a big warm coat because it was cold. And then my notes that I took while I was doing that trip, I shared them with the minister, and he never gave them back to me. So all of my notes got lost. But it was quite a trip. And the gathering was at that Capitol grounds. Yes, she was a student here. As a matter of fact, Opal was in the ROTC, one of those people that I marched under. I sure did.
Were you friends with her?
No, she was much older. Well, I knew her. She was part of the school.
Yeah.
But as far as a friend, I don't know what happened because I moved from Phoenix in 1953. I moved to to California. So I missed what was going on until I came back here in 1983. So I didn't keep up with anything but the Phoenix Monarchs Association when I was a member in California. And of course we kept communicating between the Phoenix Monarchs Association here and there, and we moved from place to place like that. I was chosen to be the historian by the president. And of course, that fit into my thesis. And I started, it was really just something that I was already looking for. And as a historian, at that time, we heard that the school was about to be torn down and destroyed. And we got busy as the Phoenix Monarchs Association. We met, we did our talk about what we could do if we, and the most important thing was that we wanted to save Carver School. We didn't want it to be torn down. So one of my jobs as that at that position, I wanted to find out how we could save the school. So I went to the Board of Education, or I went to a meeting, a historical meeting, and I met a man there, and he said, "Oh, ASU is already doing pictures of your school, and they are really going through it and doing everything." The ASU under Dr. Stolz, the professor that was teaching history at ASU, they were studying this school. And I went to them and I started getting involved with them. Dr. Stowe gave us a class of oral history. He just gave, Hattie and I went to his class of oral history, how to take oral history, and eventually the Board of Education gave us the downstairs to do a museum. We asked for that, and they gave it to us. And that's when we set up the first museum here, using all of these rooms downstairs, using the cafeteria. So there were rooms that had stories that individuals who went to school here had put together, and they had displays all over. Dottie had a lot of displays. And when we brought the children from all the schools in Phoenix, they'd come here, and each one of us were the curators for that event that we had done, or that room that we had been in charge with. And we would tell the story to the students about what that story meant, or what that room stood for. So we had a lot of good times with that. But we had some very good workers. Mr. Harris, who wrote the book, The 100 Years of, the first 100 years, he had an exhibit. People were donating us things to set up exhibits. And we've had many people would come here, and they really loved what we were doing here as we were doing that museum. And then we did a morning show on Channel 11. And I don't know why those pictures, we can't find that history. They say that it's lost. The film of all of the exhibits that we had set up were taken at that time. It was the morning show, in the morning show here in Phoenix. That was a movie. But we enjoyed putting that together, or putting together the first Black museum in the state of Arizona. From this, I had the opportunity to help the museum people in Tucson. They invited me to tell the story of how we got started, and they went on from there. They took it. They have quite a museum down there now. But I told them how we got started, and they took the information and outdid us because they did an elementary school for their museum. So those kind of things went on here at Carver for the first time because of my assignment and wanting to save this building. And we did save it. It was saved when they gave us a chance to do, but at that time the Phoenix Union had taken some parts of it and had made offices out of it. The name and the building means a lot to me. But the hardship went in with how it was taken away from the Phoenix Monarchs Association. That's a hardship part. But it was always something that we really wanted to see done here. And like I said, many of the community people brought and donated what was already put here. A lot of it was donated by the community. There was a black, it still is going, I'm sure, it was a black group. They came here and did film of us here. I can't think. There's a lot of, at my age, my memory will come after I'm not talking to you about it, but I'm thankful that it does come back. But that group came and did a film of us, and it was broadcast nationally. And one lady called me back east, and of course I was telling the story, and she said, she was crying. She said, my family had owned slaves. And that's the story that she was telling, that it was nationally known, the story of this Phoenix Monarchs Association Museum. We argued about it at first because a lot of the older members still wanted to call it the Colored Phoenix Union School, and we kept that name. But somebody came along and they said that was too much. Phoenix Monarchs Association Museum and Cultural Center, and we added Colored High School also in there. And whoever came in, they said that name was too long, so they took the colored out. But all of those colored folks died before, because they were really disappointed that it could not remain under the Colored High School organization that really worked hard to make it what it was that day. Well, I graduated in 1944. I got married in 49, and I had 2 children. And like I said, my husband got the job in Los Angeles. And we moved there. And that's where I started taking my children to preschools and got involved in preschool education, and finally got jobs teaching in preschools. setting up the first Head Start, worked with the elementary school. I supervised the children's breakfast program at Utah Elementary School. That was a job. And then I was assistant to the teacher in the preschools, in a preschool class at Utah Elementary School. And then I went into the Head Start, was asked to come and be a part of the Head Start because of my background. But I was also teaching at our early childhood education program that our church was setting up. And I was teaching there. My son, my youngest son, was a member there, and once the students found out that was my son, he couldn't do no wrong. But, and then I went on and I got a job teaching a class out in, I had to drive to Pomona to teach that class, but I taught Head Start in Pomona, California, Arizona. No, that was California.
Did you ever teach in Chandler?
Yes. When I came back here in 1983, I came back to take care of my dad, whose house was being rebuilt. And when it got finished, I brought him back after my graduation, and I was taking care of him because he had disability, and he finally lost his legs. He didn't have any legs. In the meantime, I was also taking care of his brother, and I brought both of them back to Arizona, and I was taking care of them. I took care of other people while I was doing that. And I was doing an after-school class with the Chandler Recreation and Park. I was just doing an art class there. And I went in the office one day and I asked the instructor, I said, the administration, are there any more classes that I can take? And she said, yeah, I just had a teacher drop 7 classes. And I took all 7 of those classes, and I taught for 20 years, parks and recreation, early childhood education, all the teaching that I could do for those, reading and writing and arithmetics and alphabets, numbers. I had a full class all the time, and I would have parents see me someplace and they'd tap me on the shoulder. Be glad when my daughter gets old enough to come in your class. But I really had a love for the students and the parents. One of the incidents that really stuck with me was this mother was pregnant and she brought her little girl to my class every morning. And of course I always spoke to them, good morning. And this morning she comes with the little girl's brother. And I say good morning and his eyes popped. I said, did you hear me before? He looked right at me. I still believe that he heard me all the time. Right. And now, all of a sudden, that lady's voice and her face is in my face. That was amazing to watch that. I've been writing that March, that obituary. And I want to say that my life, as I was talking to someone, I go to church on Sunday. Every Sunday I go to church, live in faith, Angelet Church in Tempe. And I have lots of friends there that are concerned about me. One of the oldest there, I am the oldest there, but I have a friend who is 3 days younger than me. And we do a video, we do a mobile Zoom program on Wednesday with Bible study every Wednesday. She is Japanese, and her birthday is, like I said, 2 days or 3 days after mine. We are the same age, 95, and we are at church. She is much stronger than I am. She lives with her daughter. I live with my daughter and my grandson and their 2 dogs. I just want to say I'm resting now because I've gone through all of the history since my dad. I got my great-great-grandfather's history, and then I got my dad's history. It's been history. So I've got all of that history in a book somewhere. It may be still under my bed, but it's there. What they did at their time and how I had to grow up and be the oldest one of 9 children. All of them are dead except 3 of us. Health-wise, I was very healthy until I reached the age of 90. And then my health, I start getting breakdowns of different things. But I've maintained good health. And that I tell people that they need to eat properly and stay away from fast food. Live the best way they can. Love people. That's the most important thing, is to love people. One young man at a group I was in, he said, I have problems because I can hate people pretty hard. And here you are, Ruth, you telling me you love everybody. We need a world full of you to tell us that. I find it very difficult to find an enemy in spite of.